All right. So this is the Klingon Opera House podcast. I expect that theme song to be
done.
happening.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay,
Yeah.
It'll be me. I'll learn Klingon and I'll throat sing in it.
Yeah. We need that by Friday stat.
Okay, fuck it. Who cares?
I hope you have nothing else going on.
Hop it in the studio right now.
AKA this room.
Yeah,
With
this-
blankets on the walls.
Yeah, your wife and my sister's office that we've converted into a podcasting den.
To clarify for my friends who are going to be listening to this, wife to be, because they're going to have a heart attack and be like, fuck, did they elope? Okay, all right, shit. So this is the Klingon Opera House. We are a Star Trek recap podcast. For hapless Star Trek nerds, by hapless Star Trek nerds. And we are a couple of conveniently bipedal humanoids.
Yeah, we're deciding to do this podcast. What's your name?
My name is M. My pronouns are they, them.
That rhymes. I like that.
What's that?
That rhymes. I like that.
Oh, shit. There we go.
M, names they, them. No, wait, shit. Wrong way around. Continue.
Okay. Today I'm Troy, because I too don't know what the fuck is going on with my hair.
Today I'm Captain Picard, because I too am constantly annoyed by temporal beings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I get that.
Today I'm O'Brien, because I'm not in the episode.
Yeah. I came with 10 pages of notes and you came with your brain.
Yeah.
Which is not a dig on you. I think this is indicative of our individual personalities.
No, my brain is just so powerful. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really, this is a muscle car of a body that I've got going on.
Yeah.
All engine, too big of a body. Fucking.
You have your warp core is outsized for your ship.
Yeah, truly.
That sounds weirdly sexual. I don't like that.
Your warp core is outsized for your ship.
No. I think there's going to be an upper limit of sex jokes I can tell because you're my fiance's brother. Or not. I don't know.
I will have no upper limit because all of them will be so inherently unsexy that it will be fine.
Okay.
Like,
there we go. I feel like we went totally off the rails.
yeah, who cares?
All right. Let's see. So how did this podcast come about? This is going to sound super off topic for a second. I did not play video games as a kid, and then I started playing Mario Kart on the Switch, and then I was like, I'm crawling. I figured out how to crawl. I'm going to sprint now. I started playing Witcher 3.
You 100%ed Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I finished it in 4 months. As someone who has not played games much, I don't know if that's fast or slow.
I don't really know. I don't, because like I don't get, I don't understand like the amount of time that like it takes to like do that, because like I don't know, for me, like I spent like a solid like 5 years doing nothing but playing Skyrim. So like,
yeah,
you take an amount of time dependent on who you are, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of side quests that I didn't get around to, but like, like your thing counts how many hours you've been doing. And I would go back to check it, and it kind of stopped counting at 200, and I don't really know why, or if I just wasn't looking in the right place. But I was like about 2/3 done with the game at that point.
Yeah.
If that tells you anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Witcher 3 happens,
yes.
right? You finished that according to you. You did your flow chart that you had.
Yes, my Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, I have a big hole in my life now. What do I do? I should start a podcast.
Yeah.
It's not like I need to go outside and see the sun or anything.
No, that's for nerds. Fuck that.
It's not like I have a wife that I should spend time with.
Maddie she can chief it out. Fucking.
She's also finishing her master's, so
it's
she's
not like
busy.
she has time to spend with you.
She's probably like, oh, thank God Emily has something else to do. Yeah, so decided to do this. We're going to recap podcasts. We're going to rotate from old Trek to new Trek. But maybe before I start going into that, you should talk about who you are.
My name is Ryan Andrew Norlander.
Do you want that out there?
I just
Your
doxed
whole
myself.
name? We can beep it.
Yeah, my name. I live at
Social security number. My Starfleet ensign code is.
Yeah. but I am a relatively newer Trek nerd. I'm a sophomore in college right now, and I started watching Next Gen when I was a senior in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So roughly 2 years that I've been watching Star Trek.
So
and
was that like right before the pandemic started, or right? Okay.
Right before the pandemic started. I have a clear memory because my high school had a planetarium. Quick flex.
Yeah.
Me and my buddy Calvin, I would talk to him about Star Trek as I was watching Next Gen for the first time in that fucking planetarium for our astronomy class. So
was he watching it too?
He has a long knowledge of Star Trek.
Okay, so you weren't just like book reporting a TV show to someone who did not watch it.
No, he is also a huge nerd.
Okay, great. I mean, you can do that. Maddie and I do that to each other all the time.
Oh, I do that all the fucking time.
Okay, yeah. I've not read like any of the books that Maddie has, and I know all about them.
At some point in this podcast, I will just go on a tangent about Warhammer 40K. I hope you know that.
I mean, we're going to have a segment about what else we're watching, so that's a planned aspect of this podcast, which the listeners will just have to put up with.
Yeah, so, as time goes on, I watch through all of Next Gen. I watch all of Deep Space Nine. I cried when Deep Space Nine ended.
Yeah, look, if you didn't cry when Deep Space Nine ended, do you have a soul?
Deep Space Nine is like, it's like art. Like, Deep Space Nine is like, I want to sit down and write a 10-page dissertation on Deep Space Nine, like in a both historical and philosophical context. Like, I want...
Dude, there's got to be so many academic articles about DS9 specifically, like Star Trek for sure, but DS9, that's got to be out there.
Well, totally. And like the idea of like, holy shit, how am I forgetting the name of the planet?
Which alien?
Literally the one that Deep Space Nine is over. How am I forgetting the name?
Oh my god, Bajor.
Wow. Holy shit.
Do you even watch that show?
Twice. I've seen it twice.
Only twice.
Shut up.
I'm never not watching DS9. I'm emotionally dependent on DS9.
That's fair enough. Bajor as a an aspect of like a post-colonial world, and like there's some pretty heavy-handed like Nazi allegories with the Cardassians in there.
Heavy-handed Nazi allegories.
That would never happen in Star Trek.
Never.
But yeah, I watched a little bit of Voyager, and like I think after the episode that Sarah Silverman was in, I was like, I need to watch something other than Star Trek, because I had been like basically marathoning Star Trek for like long periods of time.
Okay, but why was Sarah Silverman the point where you were like, this is too much? For me, that's like I'm watching exactly the right thing.
Well, because there's no more Sarah Silverman, right?
Okay.
There isn't a hot 90s Sarah Silverman in the show anymore.
The fact that Sarah Silverman was not brought onto the show in any kind of like recurring or permanent like capacity.
It made me very sad.
It's a true tragedy.
But also, like, I didn't keep watching Voyager because it was like...
Wait, have you not finished it?
Yeah, I haven't finished Voyager.
Okay, that's fun.
Yeah. I think it would be much easier for me to watch Voyager after like like if I had watched Voyager after I watched Next Gen, because they're so similar, and I was walking into Voyager with the expectation of Deep Space Nine, and it's such a different thing, right? Earlier, before this podcast, I was shitting on the original series. Like the original series, all the Star Trek properties, I want to say made before what's the really shitty one from the early 2000s?
Oh, Enterprise?
Enterprise. All Star Trek made before Enterprise is good. It's pretty good. Right? Yeah. Like, I think original series...
Hang on. I think we just pissed some people off. I know that some people really like Enterprise, and that's okay.
You have the Shadow the Hedgehog of Star Trek franchises. I don't know if you know this. I'm going to keep pissing people off. Sorry. I don't know if you know this, but there's a Shadow the Hedgehog game, which is Sonic the Hedgehog, but edgier. Okay. He has a gun in it.
So far, I see nothing wrong with this premise.
He has a gun.
As someone who's never
consumed
any Sonic the Hedgehog media whatsoever.
He has a gun, and he rides a motorcycle, and that's what Enterprise is to me. It's like... It's new metal Star Trek. Like,
all right, okay.
I don't know. This is what happens when you interject post 9/11 American culture with Star Trek. Sorry, I should stop doing this.
Because we're going to talk about Enterprise in a bit.
We're going to at some point we're going to talk about Enterprise.
Yeah, but okay, we'll get to that. Sorry, finish what the fuck you were saying about how you got into
who
Trek.
I am, and yeah.
Yeah.
So Trek for me was always like very like, because I was a big Star Wars fan growing up, and for a while, like up until high school, like that was like the extent of sci-fi for me, because like I was much more like a fantasy person. And then I started watching Next Gen, and I was like, "Oh, this rocks. This goes crazy. This fucks, right?" And
like how you like got to the Naked Now, and we're like, "Yeah, I'm with it. I'm still
Robot has sex. Great show." And so I stopped watching Trek a little bit into Voyager just because my expectations were weird. And then as time goes on, you are, to put it into simple words, fucking my sister.
Why did you have to put it that way?
Emily starts dating my sister.
Yeah.
Right. They develop a relationship, and I'm like, well, I gotta talk to this person at some point. What can I talk to them about? Turns out you're a huge Star Trek fan, and I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. And then we become like friends and such. And fast forward a couple of years, you're like, I want to do a podcast, and I've wanted to do a podcast for my entire life because I'm a fucking dweeb. This is how we got here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So how I got into Star Trek. It's 2009-ish, something like that. I'm in high school. My sister and I come home from school. Our parents aren't home yet. It's smooth brain time between them getting home and doing dinner, and then homework time, and then bed, because we were those kinds of kids. We were watching too much CSI, and we were like, this is gratuitous. We need to freshen our palates with something else. Let's do some channel surfing. I think it was on A&E. I don't really know channels anymore. It's been a decade since I had cable. But whatever channel was on, we found it kind of like mid-series. And we really liked Janeway. But then also, Tuvok really reminded us of a friend of ours. And so it was like just kind of funny to watch.
Yeah.
But then, leave high school, go to college, obtain Netflix. And then we see that Voyager's on Netflix, and so we watch it in its entirety, and we get so much more into it.
Fuck yeah.
My sister watched DS9, I think like right after graduation of college. I think like she had just moved out to the West Coast. And like, I remember that this is like, as I was getting used to my sister not living in this region anymore, like this was like a big subject of our phone calls, I think. This is how I remember it. My memory is also Swiss cheese, so I could super be wrong.
So is mine. Don't even fucking worry about it.
Great. We're perfectly matched.
Yeah.
My sister was like, yeah, this one, DS9 is great. And I was like, it's on a space station that doesn't move. What is happening that could be interesting?
That's why it's the best one.
I was so wrong. And
did they tell you that there was possibly the gayest twink ever on that show?
Well, at least I was closeted at that point. So it wasn't a selling point for me, or at least
twinks couldn't sell you on anything yet.
Well, my sister didn't know to use that selling point because
I was a twink.
Because I didn't know that I was a twink. She didn't know that I was part of the target audience because I didn't know. So, after college, I was living with my ex for 3 years or something like that ish, squishy time. Okay, that's not relevant. Anyway, I convinced him to watch Voyager with me, which was a huge accomplishment. And then when I dumped him, I was like, wow, I can never watch Voyager again because of feelings.
Yeah.
So now's a great time to watch DS9, which I did and fell in love with it.
As you should.
And then I went to Next Gen. So I did it in the reverse order.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. Oops. I mean, it worked out. We're here now, and I've rewatched everything a couple of times.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2019. I meet Maddie, your sister. I convinced her to watch. I don't even know that I asked her to watch Star Trek.
You just talked about Star Trek at her.
I think
a lot.
Yeah, I think I talked about it enough that she was like, I need to watch this. Well, she's going to be a guest on this podcast, and we can ask her then. She can clarify, because her memory is so much better than mine. Dude, the frequency with which she'll be like, yeah, we agree, we're talking to this person, we agree to do this. And I'll be like, we what?
I feel that. I fucking feel that.
And she's the one with ADHD. She should be the one that has more of an issue with it. Yeah, so she started watching it, and she was burning through it. And then I think that she told you to watch Star Trek.
She did.
And so that's how you got into Star Trek, was ultimately because of me. And
full circle.
Marrying your sister, not my ultimate goal. This is all just a long con to start a Star Trek podcast.
You played me like a damn fiddle. Fuck.
But you're enjoying yourself.
I am.
Great.
Yeah. Just kidding, I'm not. They're holding me hostage.
I've got a phaser and it's not set to stun.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, so that's how I got into Star Trek.
Fuck yeah.
So what are we doing with this podcast?
We are a Star Trek recap podcast. So what we're going to be doing is going through episodes. We have a skeleton outline in front of us. You brought notes. I'm using my very powerful brain. Mm-hmm. We are kind of just like running through episodes, recapping them, talking about them, seeing how we feel about it. We thought that since we are not your prototypical Star Trek fans, like I'm of a much younger age than a lot of Star Trek fans, and you know, we're both bisexual and you're non-binary, and you know, Star Trek has been such a like straight white dude endeavor, right? That we thought it would be, you know, straight white dude in their 30s, balding, right?
Hey, I'm turning 30 this year.
Right, but you're not balding.
No.
Not yet.
But I am gray. Well, I have gray hair. I'm not fully gray, but I have gray hair.
That kind of fucks. That's kind of cool.
I've also had gray hair since I was like 8 for some reason.
That's funny.
People in my family have gray hair early on. I think my mom turned fully gray, like, I think she was 30 when she was fully gray.
You're going to look like Geralt of Rivia.
I fucking hope so. I've got the ass for it.
We thought it would be fun for us to just kind of go through. We're going to do we're going to run the series at sort of similar times. So we're going to do like 3 episodes of Next Gen, and then we were going to do 1 episode of Picard, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like alternating old
track and new track. Yeah. So it's like...
Jinx, you owe me back to Gino.
Yeah.
Alternating
episodes. So we are just like doing that.
Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to get to all the franchises. So after Next Gen,
we're going to do...
DS9. And like maybe pair that with Discovery, and then we'll be doing the Double Ds.
Double D.
And then we'll do Voyager, and I guess we just need to wait until they make another franchise that starts with a V.
Yeah. Would we do Voyager and Enterprise? Because I don't know. Enterprise is not new Trek.
It's that weird middle one. Yeah, is Enterprise old Trek? It doesn't feel like old Trek.
It's the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't know, like... I think putting it in this way, right? I'm pretty sure it was airing when I was born, which could be old Trek, but like I think it's like the distinctive. I might piss people off with this statement, but I'm going to say it. It's the space where Star Trek started to get bad. Where Voyager
Lower Decks happened.
Lower Decks happened. We could do Voyager with Lower Decks.
That could be fun. But I mean, like, you know, you also have Strange New Worlds.
We could also do movies.
Yeah, we gotta do the movies.
We could do books.
There's also documentaries that I think would be fun to recap.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would also be cool to talk about like maybe like things like Star Trek conventions or like fan interactions and shit.
Yeah. As I was like going through this, I was like, where did conventions start? How did that start? Guess when the first Star Trek convention happened?
1987.
I think it was like 1972.
Really?
Yeah. I have it later in my notes somewhere in here. Yeah, I don't know. I think kind of the origin of conventions and the origin of Star Trek conventions would be fun to cover. Also, neither of us have been to a convention, so I think Baby's first convention would be a good...
If we go to a Star Trek convention, I'm going to like take a psychedelic before we go. This is a joke for legal reasons. Having the fear while like a Klingon cosplayer is like in front of me.
I don't want to babysit you during a con.
That's fair enough. So we're going to do a lot of shit.
Yeah.
We're going to cover a lot of stuff.
And not just talking about the episodes and like the content itself, but also talk like there's a lot of like stories about what it was like to be working on these sets and the relationships between the actors and the showrunners and all that, which, you know, then influences how the show gets made.
Right.
And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no endpoint to that thought. That was just a thought.
That's the general gist of this podcast. We're going to try to release bi-weekly. We'll see how that works.
I know what I was going to say. Enterprise. We were talking about, when we cover Enterprise specifically, talking about 9/11.
Yeah, and how that affected like culture.
It's a chapter in it.
It's a shift in American idealism.
Yeah, it's a vibe shift.
And yeah, when it's the everything is grim, dark, and weird because, you know, everyone feels unsafe during this time. I think that would be an interesting thing to have, just like as a cultural analysis, just like as these episodes are airing, what was happening in the news or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, what were people thinking about?
Yeah.
Right?
And like I think 9/11 happened while Enterprise was airing.
Yeah, it was like in the middle of the run, I think.
Yeah. And so I think that, you know, changes how the audience was receiving it. And at some point, it starts to influence the making of the show.
Yeah.
Not that they were like, we're making a metaphor about 9/11, but like you're living in an ecosystem. What's in the ecosystem is going to get into your brain in whatever you make.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to like, I mean, I think a lot about like, think about the 1989 Batman versus the Batman Begins, right? And all of that stuff.
Thinking that I've seen Batman from the 80s. That's
You've never seen Batman 1989?
You have more faith in me than you should.
I don't think I should be doing this podcast. Have you seen Batman Begins and like Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah.
The 1989 Batman, well, it's still like, ooh, it's kind of dark and fun, right? It was a Tim Burton, so it's very like stylized and weird, and
it's like fun dark, not like dark. You're gonna really be afraid of literally everything when you're done with this movie.
yeah, it's not 24, but Batman, like every Batman since 9/11 has been. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the idea where it's like we're gonna maybe, you know, explore some deeper stuff and that sort of thing. But the podcast is a recap show, and this episode we're recapping, as M put in the notes that we have, Encounter at Fartpoint.
I think you didn't accentuate the first T enough.
Encounter at Fartpoint.
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 Because I can spell.
Yeah. Okay. So, executive produced by Roddenberry. Please.
Yes. So I put executive producer in there because as the show goes on, particularly in later franchises, the actors do the directing oftentimes, or like they get involved in the show making and not just the acting.
Yeah.
And I mean, it makes sense. If you're the actor who's living and breathing this show, you're gonna have ideas. Like, you're the one who's sitting on set for hours and hours.
It reminds me of like going on a tangent about Star Wars again. One of the reasons why the prequel sucked was so bad was because none of the actors were like, George, these lines are really stunted and fucking weird. In the original trilogy, Carrie Fisher went up to George and she was like, you can write these lines, but you can't make me say them.
We needed more Carrie Fishers.
We did. And I think in Star Trek, there lies a little bit of that where it's like actors who care about their art are going to like push back against these like, you know, figures like Roddenberry, right? Mm-hmm. Who are talented to some extent, but maybe a little like fucked. I don't know.
A little bit cis hetero white man, perhaps.
Yeah. And also like I read Dune when I was 15. You know,
did you also read like The Art of War or whatever? What is that stupid long one? War and Peace?
Yes, I did read War and Peace.
Oh my god! Of course you did.
No.
So when did you read the Communist Manifesto?
I didn't. I never read the Communist Manifesto. I read Das Kapital when I was 16.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, I'm prefacing this. I don't know if you want to go on record as this. So this is just a Ryan thing. I am a communist. Yeah. So
I'll go on record as a leftist socialist.
Yeah. The thing,
do you want to tell them what shirt you're wearing? Oh yeah,
I'm wearing a Che Guevara, but it's Kira from Deep Space Nine. I didn't even realize I was wearing it for this today. You know, like I was saying, like Roddenberry feels like a very, and like, you know, I think if I wrote a TV show, I would run into like a lot of the same problems where it's like I read Dune when I was 15. I have that idea of like characters and stuff like that, but when you read that like sci-fi writing out loud. Like if you took the dialogue from a Warhammer book, right, and we're like, actors read this, it would be weird as shit. It's way easier for that to work in like the you know mind theater than it does for it to work on the screen, right? And so you have these like Like this episode felt really stunted in some places.
I have notes on that.
Yeah, I was okay. We should actually get into the recap.
Okay. Yeah. So I have some background notes and research that I'm going to share. I have a lot of pages, and I'm going to try to keep it as brief as I can.
Crunch that shit, homeboy.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I have some excerpts from the show Bible. I can just I have like literal quoted excerpts from here. How about I just like read them to you? We can riff.
I'll joke.
We can go off topic.
Yeah, it'll be funny.
I don't need to state that we're going to go off topic because we just will.
Yeah, it's what we've been doing for the last like half an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Star Trek: The Next Generation is dated near the beginning of the 24th century. 78 years have passed since the time of Kirk and Spock. They have passed into history, but they are known as legends throughout the Federation and even beyond. This was an interesting premise to like outline for a show, I thought. During the years of Kirk's Enterprise, 4% of the galaxy has been charted, not explored, since exploration would have required visits to all approximately 6 billion stars and planetary systems in the 4% of the galaxy. By the time of our 24th century stories, so next gen, only 19% of it has been charted.
Yeah.
So that I thought that was like an interesting line because like at this point there was some conversation of like what other stories could we possibly tell with Star Trek, and like
you have a whole open galaxy,
right? Yeah.
Well, and that's like I remember at the beginning of this episode, Picard is doing his opening monologue, and he's like, "I'm going to Farpoint, the edge of the known universe." I think it's really interesting, this idea that, like, yeah, there's this whole fucking huge universe that you know nothing about, right? Forget about the Gorn, forget about the fucking Klingons, right? Mm-hmm. There's this whole big world, and you're just going to go out there and, like, touch it, you know? Get your little grabby fingers on that shit, you know?
Yeah. So, Enterprise D, indicating that this is the 5th starship to carry that name.
Mm-hmm.
Now twice the length of the original 23rd century Enterprise, which adds up to 8 times its size. The new starship has much the same symmetry as the original, but it is now a vessel of less battleship sterility. Wow, I can say words. I should have a podcast. It serves as more of a community and home to a considerably larger and more diverse crew. So it's basically a flying military starbase with like a preschool and a hair salon and like a...
My understanding of the Enterprise D is that it's a, like, you know, comparing it to like maybe Voyager or something like that, right? Like Enterprise D is like a flying city.
Yeah.
It's
well, it's a complement of like over 1,000 people. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because I don't want to take too long.
Yeah.
Okay. What I found interesting was that the showrunners were initially thinking of Picard and Riker as the main leads, and not that they aren't like very important characters, but other bridge crew get almost the same amount of screen time.
Yeah, where they were thinking, like, it was much more because, like, Kirk and Spock are, like, dual leads, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they were thinking sort of the same thing. I kind of role reversed it, where, like, the more Spockish character of Picard is in charge, and the more Kirkish character of Riker, who is, in my mind, the, like, best version of Kirk possible, right? Although I think that's not saying a lot. Like you can see it a lot where it's like they really wanted to focus more on Riker, and like as time goes on and you get episodes where it's like, this is a Picard episode, this is a Riker episode, this is a Data episode, this is a Barclay episode, right? You know, shit like that. This is a LaForge episode, right? Like like they make it a cast like
yeah. Also, going back 10 minutes, we were talking about recapping the original series.
Yeah,
but I have a hard time watching it.
I think we're gonna have to be drunk for that, and I'm not 21 yet. So
yeah, well, we'll have to do a drunk episode. Maybe you can be Mother Hen for the time being.
Yeah, and
we'll bring on a guest who can drink with me.
Yeah.
Although I want to take like a what did it call? Dry spell, like an alcohol break, tea break. Whatever the fuck.
Tea breaks for weed, I think.
Yeah, but like the alcohol equivalent, except it's not January, so I can't call it dry January.
Dry month, yeah.
Yeah, it's my dry April, except we're halfway through.
sober October.
Yeah.
No booze April. I don't know.
Abstinence April. Non-alcoholic April. Yeah. No, I'm just realizing I hit 25 and I thought that wow, hangovers are bad now. this isn't fun anymore, but I can handle it. I know how to like handle this hangover. It's not great, but I can do it.
Yeah.
Approaching 30, let me tell you, it just keeps going down, keeps going downhill. It's not great.
You're a fucking old man.
I am. Okay. I have some of the descriptions of the characters. We have Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Already a 24th century Starfleet legend, Picard is an extraordinary, I can never say that fucking word, extraordinary man. Too many fucking vowels.
Extraordinary.
Much revered by his crew, he deserves the description distinguished despite being only in his youthful 50s. He has an unspoken but deep father-son relationship with Commander William Riker.
Where?
So, when I first read youthful 50s, I was like, okay, not that like you're dead at 50 these days, but like we kind of understand that the people have a longer lifespan. So I looked it up. Average lifespan at this point, theoretically, is 120 years.
I mean, like that's like being like what in the prime of your career in your 30s or something?
Yeah, it seems like it. Or I would say like when you're hitting your stride and like are in an executive level in your 40s.
Yeah.
And like comparatively today, the life
if you were a general at 40, that would be impressive.
Yeah.
No, and like the unspoken father-son relationship with Commander Riker.
What is more late 80s than an unspoken father-son relationship between a male boss and his male direct underling? Yeah. And like by father-son, do you mean antagonistic until the son meets unspoken expectations? Okay, I'll get more into
this. There's no antagonizing about it, right?
Like at the beginning, Picard is such a hard ass for performative reasons.
Yeah.
Also, it reminds me of like the familiar nature of relationships in the workplace. Like this company is a family. That also feels very late 80s to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time when, I mean, that was really the 70s, but the 80s was like the blooming of it. Was the Walmart model. Mm-hmm. That during that time you have like the Walmart model, which really like I learned in my history of capitalism class
is that at college?
At college, yeah.
Okay. They didn't do that in private art school.
Yeah. But essentially they sort of, I don't know if they were the ones who like truly invented, but they really employed the like, this is a family. You don't need a union, right? Or like stuff like that. And like it would be like make interdependence with coworkers, mm-hmm. right? And then make that bond sort of transfer to management and shit like that.
Yeah, it's like the lack of boundaries in that like your personal identity feeds into this like kind of family nature of a group identity at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that feels very Star Trek and also very American corporate to me.
Star Trek is like, quit fucking around with your mic. You're gonna.
I just realized it's really far away from my face, and you're louder than me, so I'm trying.
Oh yeah, true. Fair enough.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm not gonna like. That was rude of me to be like, quit fucking with your mic.
You can tell me to fuck off. It's okay.
But we use this phrase a lot in this podcast. Is the
we do first episode? You already know.
Yeah.
Are you Guinan? Or Q? Or do you have like Q on in your like Rolodex?
I have Q-esque powers. I've said this before.
I'm so fucked if you do.
I would.
Okay, I'm gonna shut up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I have the Lath of Heaven. I speak things into truth. Yeah. I'm fucking like joking. But I swear to God, my ego is not that big. Star Trek is the hypothetical success of the neoliberal model, right? I hear a lot of the times people be like, "Oh, Star Trek is communist. Star Trek is Marxist." No, Star Trek is what would be written if a liberal was to envision after years and years and years of progress what society would be like. You know, the notion that like, oh, we're going to go explore the galaxy. And by that, we mean we're going to induct a bunch of fucking planets into the Federation of planets, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to introduce people to human culture, and we're going to inflict human ethics on that. And the prime directive isn't even like actually a rule in Star Trek, right? That idea that like, yes, the Enterprise is going to feel like American corporate, even down to like the way that it looks.
Yeah.
It looks like a office building from the 1980s.
Yeah, like it's the mid-century modern aesthetic that also like really
which I really like.
oh yeah, oh I super like it too.
Yeah.
Also it's 2022, everyone likes mid-century modern right now, as they should. It's a good aesthetic, but like just particularly in this like setting, especially with like the fairly ambient light of Star Trek, and also like the ambient light of an office building setting. It feels very corner office with floor to ceiling glass windows, and there's like a fancy paperweight.
The Enterprise looks like a place where Jordan Belfort would do coke. You know who Jordan Belfort is?
No.
He's the Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay, yeah.
like it's that, right?
I mean, if you look at Picard's office, he literally has like the corner of his room is a floor to ceiling window, and he has like a absolutely no reason it should be there fish tank.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
like every fucking office I've ever been in.
It's super cool. It's just like all these little layers that kind of bleed back into that core. You were saying that like Star Trek is like a liberal imagining the future. I would argue that it's a liberal who thinks that he's a socialist living in a capitalist society, envisioning what he wants the future to be.
Well, it's a vision of the future where the model works. Liberalism works, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, us never having any labor unions or corporations constantly looking for profit, and then the government incrementally doing bullshit, right? It somehow leads us to utopia instead of like the shit show we have now. Today I went to my job and my boss was like, "We're a family," and I was like, right? And it's like,
if you mean by dysfunctional and no boundaries, yes, we're a family.
Yes, yeah, we are. Except my family doesn't exploit me for my labor value. And that's debatable. Yeah, I think that makes total sense, that vibe that you're getting. Right.
Yeah. Also, like, as a kid, my mom was working in an office, and, like, it was, like, a really small business to the point that sometimes I would, like, come in and, like, help them, like, put together little, like, fun packages for their vendors to send out as like little favors. Like I would come in and help them like sort invoices for like $5 an hour. And
so your family did exploit you for your labor value.
I mean, I thought I was having fun, but like, you know, I would do that for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I would just like spend. I was like at that age where my mom didn't want to leave us like at home in the summer necessarily, but like we were also. But it's like she wasn't going to send us to daycare. We were too old for that. But, like, in her eyes, too young to stay at home alone. And so we would go into the office with her.
Yeah.
And so, like, we would kind of do that stuff. But then also, there'd be, like, an empty, like, cubicle. And we would just, like, set up camp under the desk and just, like, sit under the desk. Like, with, like a pillow
the
fort.
The Enterprise feels like that.
Like, yeah. But, like having grown up with that, I don't know, like, just sitting and entertaining yourself for hours with like looking at different versions of Scotch tape holders. Yeah. And like observing that little like kind of corporate design all the time. Like something about the aesthetic of Next Gen hits that button in my memory.
Yeah, I know exactly how. I was actually walking in this episode. I was going to talk about my dad's office when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And even like as I got older, my dad though, he's a lawyer. He used to work at this sort of big corporate firm, right? And so his office is very Next Gen. It was so weird to think about, but like the carpet is like the same color. And you know, he had his big mahogany desk, and there was like little knickknacks everywhere that you could fucking play with. And like I think about also my buddy growing up, his dad had a home office, and like that was like the whoa to me, you know, right? Or like the office in your elementary school or something, right? It is like that feeling of dad's office, mom's office, right? Where it's something about that corporate aesthetic hits something real weird. And I think it's everyone with like a parent who's either a baby boomer or Gen X can like really get into that like feeling.
Yeah. Or if you yourself are a boomer or a Gen Xer.
Well, I think boomers and Gen Xers might view it, and neither of us are boomers or Gen Xers.
No, really? I'm not that old.
You're Generation X now. Sorry.
No.
They might view it much differently. Like, I'm sure if we went to my dad and we asked him about how he felt about like the aesthetic of it, he'd be like, "This feels like all the offices that I used to work in. Fuck this." Right. Like,
right. Or I mean, like, we have a certain amount of nostalgia, but also like critique about it. And I'm sure that someone of that generation would feel similarly, but on like different like levels, or like the mix would be a little different.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The Enterprise does feel that way. Yeah. That was a fun tangent. I like that.
Okay, cool. Okay, also, interestingly, a lot of these things I'm sure is common knowledge to some fans, but I mean, it's not common knowledge to me because there are people who will Google things as they watch them. I will watch it like 10 times and never Google it, and then I start Googling it and I never stop.
Yeah, same.
But apparently Roddenberry was really only involved in the creating of the first like season and a half, and then he got like sick and passed away.
Rest in peace. Good boy.
Roddenberry was not that into Patrick Stewart as Picard. Like, he had to be convinced. Yeah.
Because I think Stewart is I think he's a perfect Picard.
Same. But so he wanted
stern, a little gay, like
he wanted Stephen Macht, M-A-C-H-T. But so he was in Suits, Castle, Murder, She Wrote, and DS9. Those are the only things from his IMDb that I recognize. I know his face, but I can't think of what I've seen.
Who was he in DS9?
He was an admiral in DS9. So looking at this, how do you look at this picture? Describe it for our audio listeners.
There's a very square-jawed, gray-haired man who is kind of handsome, I'd say.
Like a rugged way.
In like a rugged way. I think the best vibe is like off-brand Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
A more sophisticated Harrison Ford, perhaps.
Yeah, so that's who we wanted, and the guy turned down the role. And he didn't like that Patrick Stewart was bald. In order to even do the audition, he made him wear a wig. And like they had him do the French accent, and then they dropped the wig, they dropped the accent, and that's why Patrick Stewart just has an English accent.
That is interesting to me because and I think this is because I think Patrick Stewart is a good actor, right? Stewart is so definitional to me in Picard as a character, where he's a physically small man. Mm-hmm. Right, he feels very like Napoleon to me. He's a brilliant man. He's great at his job, but he's a very small man.
I want to give him a piggyback ride.
I get that, but what I mean is both psychologically and sort of physically, right? Where Picard is very in a box. He's very I want to follow the rules.
Yeah.
I want to, I'm going to do this my way. I have my fucking opinions on things. He reminds me of, he seems like someone who would be really into Immanuel Kant as a philosopher, right? Where it's objective rules, always, forever.
So this is what you're bringing to the podcast. You're bringing philosophy and shit because you know so much more about that. I'm blank-eying at you, not because I'm not interested, because I just don't know. But that's why you're here, so you can tell me.
Yeah, I'm a fucking sophomore in college, so I don't know that much, but I do have a lot of reference for history and for philosophy because I like to read it. When I'm not reading sci-fi, I'm trying to read something philosophical because it's interesting to me. I think there's a lot of concepts in Star Trek. Star Trek really likes to get into the we're going to present this philosophical conundrum. If Picard is, experiences this whole life in the flute episode, right? Is this more real than the real world or something like that? And there's real philosophical presence to that, stuff like Rene Descartes, who's the same guy who inspired the Matrix. I don't know if I'm saying Descartes right, but if I'm saying it wrong, you don't tell me. Descartes. Descartes. I don't fucking know. I said that I was Italian. It is this sort of the idea that Star Trek exists, and I like this with a lot of media, where it exists in conversation with other much more, maybe seen as more serious. It is more serious, but I don't think that should take away from the conversation, right? The idea that this is, as a show, is in conversation with a much larger intellectual tradition, right? The idea that this exists in conversation not only with the sci-fi world. I am going to talk a lot about sci-fi before Star Trek, I think. Like I said, I read Dune. It's also in a conversation with a much more, perhaps maybe what we consider to be a deeply intellectual world, right?
Star Trek is fan fiction of philosophy.
I think so. It reminds me a lot of the old format of this is how Lovecraft came around. Back in the day, the way that sci-fi was ever done was, here's this fucking comic book called Weird Strange Fiction or some shit, right? And there's articles in there, and it'll be stories of sci-fi shit that you'll read, what's his name, who wrote Starship Troopers. Unironically too. I'm forgetting his name. Heinlein, right?
I don't know.
He's a dumb asshole. It's that, you know, I have no mouth, but I must scream. I think that's the name of the thing. There's a story where it's like, there's a computer that keeps a certain amount of people alive because it's like fucking evil and it tortures them or whatever. Right? Yeah, it sucks, right?
Huh.
All of humanity is dead except for these like, you know, couple of people, and this computer keeps them there, right? Not as exactly like Star Trek concept, but Star Trek exists in that idea of we're going to do this episodic weird shit.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this fucking anomaly that is all powerful and explicitly telling you not to do something, right? Q, right? Q shows up. And that's like idea is like, what are the implications of this, right? It's just like, we're going to come up with a wacky concept and like run with it as far as we can.
Okay.
Very, very like classic sci-fi, right? And I like that idea of like Star Trek is if you whack some moral philosophical questions in with, kooky sci-fi and stuff like that. I think Star Trek is like the best example of like true sci-fi, if that makes sense.
I think I need to watch more sci-fi to have an opinion on that statement.
Yeah, I think particularly in contrast to like Star Wars, where like Star Wars is like science fantasy.
This is why I'm like I'm not a good Star Trek fan, because I haven't watched a lot of other sci-fi to like judge it by. And why are you giving me that look?
Because like I feel like being a good Star Trek fan means that you have to watch Star Trek and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the definition of a good Star Trek fan can go like so like deep, of like you've read all the comics, you go to cons, you've seen everything, you've also
fucked
seen
Gene Roddenberry.
You've made love with his ghost,
yeah,
a la Beverly's that episode.
Yeah, doing a seance to fuck Gene Roddenberry's ghost.
Look, someone's done that. What's that
I
rule? If that idea exists, it exists as porn on the internet.
Oh, Rule 34.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay. Should we go back on topic?
Yeah, we're going back on topic. I put us on a whole tangent.
I mean that happens. Okay. So I have a lot of character excerpts from the show Bible, but we don't need to go over all of them. I have one for Lieutenant Deanna Troi. I feel like this tells you something about the writers.
Everyone's mom. Everyone's favorite mom.
Troi was written
Freudian.
by someone who's never been to therapy.
Yeah. So we were having a conversation.
Maddie has so many opinions about this.
We have to get Maddie on an episode that is like Troy centric. We should get Maddie on the Barkley episodes.
Oh my god. Okay, so Lieutenant Deanna Troi, an attractive and very witty Starfleet professional.
Starting off with attractive.
Right. Nowhere else they, like with Riker's description, they're not like hunk of meat with a great ass, and like they don't say anything like that.
Like the male version of that would be like handsome and dashing Will Riker, right?
Yeah, but they don't even like cover that.
Yeah, well, because Star Trek is for horny nerds, right?
Yeah, everyone is in the horny brig every episode.
I'm sending you to the horny brig.
Yeah. Yeah, but also I would argue that she's not that witty. She's cutting in her remarks.
Troi kind of comes off as an airhead sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that
you know who's witty? Crusher.
Yeah.
And Picard is witty. That is kind of interesting, but it's because one, Troi, as I was watching these episodes, it's very clear that Troi is a therapist being written by someone who's never been to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Very funny in my mind. But also, she wouldn't feel out of place being like a Bond girl or the female lead in like an Arnold movie, right? And not in a Sarah Connor and Terminator way. You know what I mean? In a like damsel in distress way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the issue with that is getting Freudian, as I shouldn't though. Maddie will get mad at me for that.
I mean, in the context of when this is written, that is the leading psychological theory.
True. Getting Freudian with it. Deanna Troi was written to be everyone's mom.
Yeah.
A bad one.
Especially in the first episodes, she's feeling everyone else's feelings for them.
Yeah, well, that's quite literally when they like invent betazoids. That is like in my brain, like, yeah, you made this character to like feel someone else's feelings for them. Okay, this is on a much more like writing level, but that feels kind of lazy to me because it's like, well, how's this character feeling? Let's talk to Dr. Troi, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that quote from Futurama? The robot devil is talking to Fry, and he's like, "You can't just have your characters say how they feel. That makes me mad." Like, fucking, I don't know.
Okay, I can give you the rest of her description. She is a starship's counselor, a position of vital importance on space vessels of the 24th century. You wouldn't fucking know it by the way that this show runs.
Oh, yeah.
The success of a starship's mission depends as much on the efficiently functioning human relationships as on the vessel's mechanisms and circuitry. Troy is a master in human and alien psychology. She got she got her degree from an online university.
Troy, alumni of DeVry University.
Also, Starfleet trained as a bridge officer. Her mother was a Beta Z alien, and she has inherited a form of telepathic ability which allows her to feel the emotions of others.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Uh-huh.
I will say the first time I was watching through this before I went to therapy, I really liked Troy.
Yeah.
I think part of that was because she wears that fucking bodysuit, right?
Yeah.
And like, as much as I am, I don't know, I'm a weak man. You know, I'll just say that, right? Yeah, like thinking about her as a character is like really like, ugh.
Yeah, it's one of those where like the actual writing of the character is really like often disappointing and like it's hard to engage with, but the actor brings a lot to the character, and that's what I'm most interested most of the time when she's on screen.
The actor is really good.
Yeah.
Like what's her name? I'm forgetting.
Oh, until you asked me, I knew
You
it.
could have fucking said it.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Troy.
Mm-hmm.
The outlet for horny
Yeah.
in this series. Unlike Deep Space Nine, where every character is an outlet for horny.
I mean, I think it also as the show goes on, everyone's an outlet for horny on Next Gen, but okay.
Yeah,
so-
you also have Tasha Yar in this. Doesn't she die at the end of the season?
Yeah, I don't
Spoilers. Go fuck yourself.
know that she even makes
Been
it through.
out since 1989.
Does she even make it through the first season?
I don't remember. I know the actor quit, and they were like, "Tasha's
Yeah.
dead."
I mean, that's something that I want to cover is, like,
Is-
what happened with that actor.
Yeah, me too.
And also, like, after season 1, they took out Beverly Crusher and replaced her with Dr. Pulaski. And then
Yeah.
and then Beverly came back.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's something else I want to cover. But
Yeah.
Okay. More stuff from the show Bible. They set themselves some new rules about what this new Trek was going to look like. Quote, no stories about warfare with Klingons or Romulans, and no stories with Vulcans. We are determined not to copy ourselves and believe there must be other interesting aliens in a galaxy filled with billions of stars and planets, which is interesting because given the new franchises that come after this point are so self-referential, and each franchise often like takes the format of a plot and recycles it. Like, think of like that episode where Riker gets accused of murdering a scientist because he was perceived to be having an affair with the scientist's wife.
Yeah.
And literally the same thing happens to Tom Paris.
Yeah.
in
Well, and
Voyager.
you have, I mean, in a much more like meta self-referential thing, right? You have that episode. I mean, Deep Space Nine lets itself get like really referential. You have the Mirror Universe episodes. You have and you also have the Trouble with Tribbles episode where they quite literally edit themselves into an episode of the original series.
That was an episode where like the technological aspect of like making that look right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting showcase of what they were able to do with that budget at the time.
Not unworthy. You know, not unworthy of doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will say I like that attitude of let's not copy ourselves. Let's not let rest on the laurels of.
Yeah.
That is something that a lot of content likes to do, where they're like, not to do this again, but Marvel movies will be like, this was in the comic book. Look, it's the comic book. We're going to reference a character from the comic book, and you can fucking read about it on the fucking internet. Ooh, and everyone will make a fucking video about it, and you'll be like, great. When does character things happen, right?
I feel okay, as someone who's watched a minimal amount of Marvel stuff, I feel like Marvel just realized how big fanfic is and headcanon is and monetized it.
Oh, yeah. No, they did make Tumblr fodder for every villain except for like Ultron. And even Ultron, vaguely sexy robot. That's a good band name. Vaguely sexy robot. And it's also like half of their business is getting 30-year-old nerds to like fucking open mouth smile and point at the screen when they see like Moon Knight get referenced or something. And they go, oh my God. Right. I wish there was video of me so I could do the like thing.
Video streaming might come one day eventually. I don't know if I don't. My hair needs to finish growing out first.
That would be so funny because I always look disheveled.
Like, I don't know if you experienced this having done like a lot of your education virtually at this point. You know, I've been working from home for a few years now, and all of my meetings happen on video call. Mm-hmm. And day in and day out, seeing a little video of you from slightly below every day, especially when you're going
warps your fucking perception of yourself.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. I've been growing out my hair for a few months now, and it's felt real. Like, I don't know what to do with it. I'm trying to just get to a bob. And in the meantime, I don't want pictures taken of me, let alone watch a video of myself.
Yeah.
For several hours every week.
That is fair enough. But yeah, like that idea of like we're not going to be self-referential and like do like just like Vulcans. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's like I respect that a lot.
Yeah. I can also respect that too. It's just it's just interesting to be like, okay, you started here and this is where you wound up. Not that starting there was a bad idea, but it's just interesting where the evolution took them.
I think also with a series like Star Trek where it is so cult, right? If you were to do a reboot, like let's say the original the Next Gen never gets made, or Next Gen gets made, but Deep Space Nine and Voyager don't, right? And they're like, we're going to reboot Star Trek now. There would not be the same level of restraint where they're like, we're not going to just like constantly like self-referential shit. Like there'd be a main character who's like a fucking tribble or something. Like it would be.
Oh man, I hope they do that in Lower Decks season 3.
I'm into that. Actually, that's a good idea. If you do that, writers of Star Trek, you owe me $6,000. That's not a lot of money.
Writers are not paid that well.
Copyright.
Our people send it to their people.
Yeah. Fucking yeah. I respect that a lot. I like that a lot.
Okay. I had one last note from the show Bible. No, I'm amazed that I am so much worse at talking when I'm literally reading from something.
Oh yeah, it's because you're not used to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not that I'm awful at speaking to begin with. I feel,
You're fine. You're doing well.
So far. Quote, no stories in which our characters must do something stupid or dangerous, or in which our technology breaks down in order to create a jeopardy. Our people are the best and brightest, and our technology is tried and proven. Likewise, our characters are very committed to their ship, crewmates, and their mission. Please do not have them abandoning or betraying same because they have fallen in love with the beautiful pirate princess. Which I like, especially when Gene Roddenberry was still involved in the creation of like the first season. He's so obsessed with like the moral sterility and perfection of his characters, which is just not interesting.
Yeah, they're flawless in this first season.
Yeah,
and like, I mean, remind me if I'm correct on this, but isn't there an episode where all the characters on the deck get addicted to a fucking video game because but like getting political again. It's the concept of meritocracy showing its really stupid, ugly head, where it's like, these are the best of the best. They're on the big battleship, so they're going to be the most competent, which is not how hierarchy works, right? Like,
well, you can be competent in so many ways, but not in others. That's how most humans are.
Yeah.
All humans.
And it creates like a very boring character.
Yeah.
But here's a great example of this. The Federation of Planets is basically what if the United States of America was like better and controlled the entire world and a series of planets, right? Mm-hmm. In the United States of America, there's a thing called an F-35, which is notorious for exploding on the tarmac. It's like a $5 million fucking plane or something like that just blows up on the tarmac. There is no world in which the entire enterprise is competent, right? Like there's no world in which like there isn't some like someone's like stupid fucking son who got in because of nepotism.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
Wesley Crusher is in this, but
and also like the idea that the technology is infallible. I can't remember the last time I used technology for any given amount of time and not had an issue with it. Like that's just not how technology works.
I like that idea though that like we're going to cap ourselves on this because that is a really easy way to write it, right? Like I feel like the like idea that like, oh, our ship is breaking down or we need fuel or something like that, right? That would be a very easy thing to just do over and over again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're on the Oregon Trail, you have dysentery again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the fucking warp drive is fucked up again.
Yeah. Which is funny because like the warp drive or like the dashboard explodes and sparks.
Yeah.
Like
that happens a lot on Voyager, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Starships notoriously have these same series of issues. The first seasons feels very sterile for a reason. And
yeah.
Like, you know, Gene Roddenberry got us to this, like we could not have gotten here without Gene Roddenberry.
But it's a flawed approach.
He was kneecapping it from the beginning. And, you know, not that like, oh, thank God Gene Roddenberry died, but like it's good that the fact that we don't live forever and like new people get to handle media and make new things, like that is important.
Yeah, and I mean, like, as much as I wish like Tolkien was still alive to like
he was a little bitch about new culture though.
And that's why he was so good for Lord of the Rings though.
Yeah.
Because you can't it's so his brain baby, right? But like I agree, right? I think it's a good idea that like, you know, other people got to handle Trek. Not glad Gene Roddenberry is dead though. Yeah.
Also,
going full on track, it is not good that the creator of Star Trek died.
Yeah.
But
he also like died like a awful death. Like he had like a kind of like rapid but very sad, uncomfortable decline.
Poor dude.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is
do you think the mic is picking up her purring?
I hope so. This like idea, like I think that formula could work if you're like, we're going to have these characters who are perfect and we're going to put them in increasingly difficult situations. Like the best one is the episode named Chain of Command, where
Rings a bell.
Picard is fucking taken prisoner by, I think it's Cardassians, right? And there's like there is 4 lights, or there's 5 lights, right?
Yeah.
That thing of like Picard has an unbreakable will. He's never going to give up. He's always going to say that there's like, you know, whatever amount of lights he actually sees there is, right? And that's actively a detriment to him, right?
Mm-hmm. Like
it's like turning this Boy Scoutness into a fault.
Yeah.
That is, in my mind, very fucking cool, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's a plot occasion where that aspect of a character is fulfilling as a viewer. But in an episode to episode, like little minutia, like slice of life part of it, that like
that's kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what like that episode where Picard is, you know, being tortured, you get to see him come right up to that line of breaking, and they like he is freed right before he does break. And it's like you're watching him be tortured and you're like, oh my God, wow, he's holding, like that's like you're impressed with Picard. And then at the end of the episode, you see him talking to Troy and be like, I was literally about to say that there were 5 lights.
Yeah.
Like he was broken, and you get to see Picard be broken, but he just like got saved in time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that's true. And there's the writing jujitsu of like, we're going to make this thing that seems on the outside to be like perfect. We're going to make that a flaw for him. We're going to make it so damaging to him that it is the conflict of the episode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, especially with this first season, like the way that Picard is fucking talking to Q, where like Q shows up and Picard has no fear, nothing he fucking cares about. And Q is just like, fuck you, humans. And Picard is like, you're a bitch. What are you doing this? And like, you're literally talking to God. Like if you like, it's like coming face to face with Allah himself and being like, yeah, whatever. Right.
God
like,
showed up in your living room and he's a troll and you're just like shit talking him with no fear.
Yeah. All of them are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's no one is afraid of Q in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't think I would be afraid of Q because he looks like my fucking uncle. Like
what? Q also looks like an uncle that I would have too.
Q looks like an uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle Core.
He has uncle vibes.
Especially considering how weird he is to Janeway. Uncle vibes. We should get into the actual recap.
Yes. I'm starving. I think I need to visit the replicator.
All right, yeah, we're gonna be back in a second. We're pausing the recording. Okay, we're back.
Yeah. Okay.
Had to go eat cookies real quick.
Yeah. Scarf some candy. Lola, get out
Excuse
of the
me.
box.
Lola, stay in the box.
That's where all the equipment is. Lola.
Lola is doing cat mischief.
So we're realizing that we're running really long,
So
and we haven't even done the recap yet.
So we're gonna split this into 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Background info episode, and then the recap.
Yeah. Also, unfortunately, I live above a music venue.
So yeah, so if you hear that,
We're gonna have to see like how loud it is tonight.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blame
So
jazz, everyone.
I have a section on the rebooting of Trek.
Okay, this sounds interesting.
Okay. So also I should say my sources. Obviously, earlier was the show Bible. This time it's Wikipedia for me. I was hoping to research other sources, but ran out of fucking time.
Wikipedia fucking works. Like
I think I'm gonna be starting to do a monthly donation because I think I'm gonna be using Wikipedia a lot going forward.
we're not writing like a fucking academic paper, right? Like
Yeah.
Actually, you have to go to a peer research journal on Star Trek, which I'm sure fucking exists.
Yeah.
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 Also, I'm gonna eat a peanut M&M on mic.
Okay, we're gonna wait and let Nor cut this out. Yeah. We're not keeping this.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, if you need fuel, you need fuel.
Give me fuel. Give me fire. Give me that which I desire. Huh.
What is that from?
It's a Metallica song. Fuel. You've never heard Fuel?
No. I probably have, but it's not, in my internal filing cabinet.
It's not in the core memories.
No. Franz Ferdinand's in there. A lot.
Their commissar?
What?
Wait, is that for no. That's different guy. Franz Ferdinand the band or Franz Ferdinand the guy who got shot?
The band. No, I'm really into the man that got shot.
Honestly, there's a rich historical thing there.
Yeah. So on how Star Trek got rebooted and how it became next gen.
How Star Trek got its groove back.
Yeah. To start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. You've seen The Sound of Music, right?
No.
What? Okay, we're even
You've never
now.
seen RoboCop.
Yeah,
Shut the fuck up.
We're even. We'll do a one-off episode on RoboCop and a one-off episode on Sound of Music. Oh my god. Okay. The original series.
I like that implies that RoboCop and Sound of Music are like on equal levels.
RoboCop has musical numbers, right?
RoboCop has an intricate critique of the policing system and its relationship to capitalism. And also a guy getting shot in the dick.
No. It's Sound of Music. There's Nazis, but not a lot of discussion about the police state.
Well, Nazis are a police state.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that part where what's her name? Maria Van Trapp or whatever?
She becomes Maria Von Trapp when she marries the governor.
Yeah, Maria.
Like halfway through the movie.
I love when Maria Von Trapp looks directly into the camera and just says, "Google Operation Paperclip."
The cats are fucking with the door, but I don't think there's a way to stop them.
Yeah, there's going to be so many noises going on that we can't control.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get with it because music is starting to come from downstairs. Okay. The original series ran from 1966 to 1969.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty short run considering what came out of it.
Yeah. Well, and you have the movies and stuff, which those were released in like the 70s, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to have been given like that the show ended in 69. But Paramount started to consider making a Star Trek film by 1972. But it didn't want to compete with the Star Wars movies because that started, which is funny because today
they directly compete.
Right. They would be like, "Oh, this other studio whatever is doing this shit and it's blowing up. We need to make our own version."
Yeah. Well, like you think about like Discovery is in direct competition with like The Mandalorian. and, you know, whatever other Star Wars bullshit they're putting out. Bad Batch and fucking Book of Boba Fett, which is really just like Mandalorian season 2.5.
Yeah.
Tangential hot take. Next thing.
So they decided to make a TV series instead, thinking that it was like kind of a different consumer like ecosystem.
And fair enough, it is.
They planned on using the original cast, and that the working name of Star Trek Phase 2, turns out they kind of like rejudged that to become a movie instead eventually.
The first Star Trek movie, right?
I'm not sure. I if I'm remembering the Wikipedia article correctly, I think it became Generations, but I don't know, it can't have.
No, because isn't Generations the one?
Picard's in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to recap the movies because we don't know shit.
I've seen a few of the movies.
Oh, I have not. I've
seen the J.J. Abrams movies.
I've seen that too. I watched the second J.J. movie with a really shitty ex, and I fucking hate that movie. But I think it's because I saw it with that ex.
Well, it's also bad.
Is it?
But they're basically just like Wrath of Khan again. Like,
yeah, that's what I thought. God, I hardly remember that. But anyway, yeah. So Star Trek Phase 2, this like working concept script, kind of gets recycled, kind of doesn't. I want to cover that sometime because that is sort of interesting in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they changed their mind again and made films instead, and like those sets kind of got used for the films, also kind of got used for Next Gen. By 1986, 2 decades after the original series debut, the fandom for Star Trek was still like alive and thriving, which like the Paramount executives were like, what? But like when I was first reading about this, I was like, yeah, fuck, of course. But then I was like, TV was a pretty new phenomenon still.
Well, and it was also like the 80s were, and I might be wrong about this, but the 80s were like VHS kind of hits the scene around that point, I think. I don't know.
I think you're correct.
I imagine some part of that is like people remember Star Trek, and like I'm sure they released like a Star Trek VHS or something like that, and they're like, holy shit, this is really good, right?
Yeah, I have here. The first Star Trek con happened in 1972. So that's a good...
it's only what?
It's 3 years after. Yeah. But they expected a couple hundred people. Several thousand showed up.
Shit.
Yeah. And it like kind of started because like these Star Trek fans would go to sci-fi cons and no one would take them seriously. And they were like, fuck it, we'll do our own. But like the fact that the fandom showed up like that and was so not isolated, but they were like, we like this shit and we're not weird for liking it. We like it so much, we're going to do a big thing about it.
Except they were weird for liking it.
Yeah, but good kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Paramount...
say that like I'm not doing a fucking Star Trek podcast right now.
But so Paramount was like, oh, damn, this is new and different. I mean, like, throughout history, even like with literature, you had like long living fandoms. Like, think of Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, I'm going to bring it up again, Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like the nature of the fandom was like a little more like lively and more of a market that had like somewhere to go monetarily.
Mm-hmm.
And so like at that point, they were like, we really need to make this TV show.
Yeah. They're like, there's so much money in this.
Yeah. Apparently, the first season saw a lot of writers come and go because they had a lot of issues with Roddenberry. They were like constantly rewriting their work, which like of course, like he wrote the original series. Like I'm not surprised.
It's the George Lucas effect, right? Fucking, it's how you get I don't like sand as a line of dialogue, right? It's the same reason why you get Data fucking a human woman, right? Like,
yeah. Naked Now is going to be an interesting episode to recap.
I'm gonna have so much fun with that.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, but so apparently there was even this writer who wrote a script about a gay couple, and there was like a fairly heavy-handed metaphor about AIDS, and Roddenberry cut it, and the guy left because of it.
Yeah.
The people who stayed were like, well, it was bad writing. It's not that it was about gay people, it was bad writing. But the person who left was like, no, it's because it's gay. Look, it was probably kind of both.
I mean, yeah, it's season 1 Star Trek.
Yeah, but like it kind of like says something about how kind of contentious the writer's room was for the first season or so. Yeah,
where it's like someone is willing to leave, right? And like I get like, okay, approaching this through our lens, right? Because part of me wants to say like it probably was bad writing, but so was everything.
Yeah, like you can rewrite a script if like you.
You can edit it.
Yeah.
You can do that kind of stuff. I imagine nobody handled being gay or AIDS well in the 80s.
What? Really?
Especially not the Reagan administration. But yeah, like nobody handles that well at that point. So it could genuinely be like really bad writing, but another part of it could be like, I mean, we talked about this a lot, and this is something I'm actually going to bring up a couple of times because like it's a really good example of like the sort of homophobia of this era of Trek. In Deep Space Nine, Garrick and Julian Bashir, where the actors are playing them like they're gay, and then fucking what's his name?
Rick Berman.
Berman is like, fuck you guys. Cial is here now, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. The worst beard in history. Let's see. Did you have more thoughts or can I move on?
Go on.
Okay. So Roddenberry was really intent on depicting human interaction, quote, without drawing on the baser motives of greed, lust, and power. Like that's something that he said. And how very white man to think you can tell a story without themes of exploitation. Like, but that shit has been with us since BC. That's still going to be here. What is this, like 4 centuries from when he's writing it?
Okay, I can kind of see. Okay, I am a materialist. I am, that means like I do believe that people are motivated by shit like that, right? Well, not exactly. I'm summarizing it poorly right now. But what I'm trying to say is it seems ridiculous to try and write a story with that sort of idea of like, we're not going to depict any of that.
Yeah. Like, what else is there?
War.
Yeah, but then they say they don't want to cover that. But what's also interesting is that this is nearing the end of the Cold War, right? At this point.
Yeah, the wall wouldn't fall for a while. I think it's like 89 when the wall falls. Someone's gonna actually me on that, but I know the Soviet Union collapses in 91.
Okay. But like the way in Next Gen specifically, the way that there's like all these little like covert.
Pascal has entered the room.
They do that all the time. Like they do the little high beam act on the gate.
Yeah.
Like the Klingon shit, and there's some Romulan shit. That's very Cold War to me.
Once the Borg get involved, I will have a big take about that.
Yeah. Well, then that becomes a hot war in the show.
Well, okay, but I mean, like the Cold War influence of Star Trek is really present with the Borg because the Borg are communists.
Yeah,
they're meant to be communists. Like, and I think it's super funny, but
yes. So oftentimes when I'm watching Star Trek, I'll be like, am I just used to like current era TV and like it feels wooden because of that? But apparently initial reviews of season 1 said it was stiff and dry, but that Patrick Stewart's acting was like kind of carrying the show.
Yes, because it is.
Yeah. And when I read that, I was like, oh, okay. So it's not just that I'm watching this like, 3 decades later.
Yeah. And like, especially as time goes on, you see acting get better.
Yes.
Delivery and stuff like that. As I get the feeling that the actors not only get a feel for their characters more, but they also get more influence over what their characters are.
Yeah. Yeah. And they kind of like workshop like the way that they deliver lines and what that like when you watch like episode 1 Data.
Very different.
So different.
Yeah.
He smiles.
Yeah.
Like 4 times.
Yeah. And like these first like 2 episodes that we just watched, Riker doesn't feel quite coming into his own the same way. And like Troy is like really fucking wooden in this episode, these episodes.
Yeah.
But, like,
it's like, unless she's feeling someone else's feelings, she doesn't have
She's
feelings.
very blank slate. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I have on rebooting it. And I have some on Gene Roddenberry. I wanted to cover Rick Berman too, but then I was like, I already have 6 pages of notes.
Yeah.
I'll have to cover him on a different episode.
We'll do that for the next one.
Yeah. I mean, also Rick Berman was involved in the creation of Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of time to talk about Rick Berman. I'm also sure we will be talking about him a ton.
Yeah, talking a lot of shit about him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Gene Roddenberry.
Don't be mad at me, Star Trek fans.
What?
Don't be mad at me, Star Trek fans.
I feel like people generally are at least annoyed with Rick Berman.
Yeah, like Roddenberry, I feel like he's a very like sort of kindly old man.
Yeah,
who he's just a boomer. You know?
The cats are fucking with the equipment.
Pascal noises.
Yeah. Pascal ASMR.
This is the Pascal cast.
Pascast.
Pascast.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
I feel like the cats were like, you guys have been recording long enough. We're raining terror on you now.
Yeah. What I was gonna say though is like, Roddenberry is like he's just like a boomer. What's his name? Fucking Berman is too, but like Berman is in like a really shitty way. Roddenberry, it feels like he just doesn't get it. Nobody explained it to him. No, he didn't. He doesn't have the resources.
Well, so
it feels like Berman is explicitly shitty.
Yeah, Roddenberry is from the Greatest Generation.
Yeah, so he's like a boomer's boomer. Like,
and like, yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got from about Roddenberry too. Before I started like reading about him, no one talks about Roddenberry as like the asshole. Everyone talks about like Rick Berman as like the asshole that screwed up what could have been good about Star Trek.
yeah.
So, I didn't write it down, but I think I remember that he was born in 1922.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
That was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Full name, Eugene Wesley Roddenberry, Sr., because he names one of his kids after himself.
Weird.
Also, Wesley totally right in for Roddenberry.
You think so?
He basically said so.
Very weird to be like, I'm a grown man and I'm going to have a boy as my...
I think it kind of also explains why Wesley's a bit weird.
And why everyone fucking hates him.
Yeah. So, he grew up in LA. His dad was a cop. And
that explains a lot.
Gene served in the Air Force in World War II. He flew 89 combat missions and survived 2 plane crashes. One where he was a pilot, one where he was a passenger.
Holy shit.
While he was in the force. After the war, he worked as a commercial pilot for Pan American World Airways. 2 of his routes went from New York to Johannesburg and New York to Calcutta, the 2 longest Pan Am routes at the time. And he was in a 3rd plane crash where he broke 2 ribs.
He survived 3 fucking plane crashes?
Yes. He broke 2 ribs, dragged injured passengers out of the burning plane, and led the group to get help. 15 dead, 11 injured, 8 unharmed.
Holy shit.
He quit the following year. After that, I would have been like, I'm out. This is 3 strikes, I'm out. I'm not flying planes anymore.
He wouldn't have gotten another fucking day out of me. Like, I would have been like, I fucking quit.
I don't know. Also, like, Star Trek makes so much more sense that someone who was in the Air Force wrote Star Trek.
Yeah.
He later joined the LAPD and began writing TV scripts while he worked for the PD. His first 16 months on the job, he was in traffic.
Wait, Roddenberry was a cop?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Cop, son of a cop. But look, this makes sense.
I wanted to do Roddenberry revisionism on this. I wanted to defend him a little bit, but he's a fucking cop.
Well, yeah, I think that like themes of Star Trek make sense when you realize that he was in World War II. He was a pilot. He was a cop.
Star Trek feels very like post World War II. Like, we're gonna do the UN everywhere.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. First 16 months in the traffic division. Then he transferred to the newspaper unit, which became the public information division. So he was basically in like the PR.
Yeah.
And then he was appointed chief of police's speechwriter, which of course, when you think of like how Star Trek scripts go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he became the technical advisor for a new television series of Mr. District Attorney, which, crime procedural.
Got a hard on for authority figures, this one. District attorneys, cops.
Yeah. I mean, also the fact that, like, most of Star Trek is based on a bridge crew.
Yeah. No, and like every main character of Star Trek that he was directly involved in the creation of was like a strongman, basically. Like, not like a strongman isn't like, oh, I'm buff and tough and shit like that. More like, I don't know, all of these characters are like, what if James Bond was, I don't know, less horny?
It's they're horny. It's if James Bond was in senior management and not just like a field.
Spy.
Yeah. So he became a technical advisor for this crime procedural television show, which led to him writing for the show under his pseudonym Robert Wesley.
Robert Wesley.
Reading about this today, also working for, big corporation myself.
As an artist.
I'm not supposed to like be doing freelance that uses the same skills or like is the same product as what I work on at work because it's like a conflict of interest.
Right.
Reading about this, I'm like, how did he get to do this? I mean, he got to do it because he used a pseudonym and it's the 80s and the internet doesn't exist.
Yeah, no one fucking cares.
Yeah, he's not gonna like slip up and put it on his Instagram story.
I want to know what Gene Roddenberry's Twitter would be like.
Oh my god. Oh my god. That'd actually be like a funny spoof account.
That would be really fun. Do you follow Riker Googles on Twitter?
No,
It's
I'm not on
fucking
Twitter.
hilarious, dude. Oh my god, it rocks.
Oh my god. So his TV career. He wrote scripts for Highway Patrol, which was an action crime drama series, ran from 1955 to 1959, and Have Gun Will Travel, an American Western, which ran from 57 to 63. Excuse me, I'm gonna try to burp off mic, unlike some heathens in this room. You know what other non-speaking audios can be picked up by this mic is me slapping your little bitch face for burping into the microphone all the time.
Lady and gentlemen, lady, there's one woman listening to this. They're mad. I repeat, they are mad.
I'm getting mad. So, like, also worked on a Western. Totally, yeah, I
There's
can
like 40 million Western episodes in fucking Star Trek, too.
I feel that overnote, whatever a sommelier would use to describe like a flavor that's like within the mix.
It's a theme.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's like a literal holodeck, like with Worf and Alexander.
Yeah.
They cosplay cowboys together, or no, not cowboys.
Yeah, cowboys.
Sheriff and deputy.
Yeah, and they have to. That's a fun episode.
It is a fun episode. Okay. This is going to be a running theme of perspective from me about the show. Fucking love Worf, and I love his ass as a handsome man. It's a very goofy hat that he wears on that holodeck program, but I love this handsome pile of meat in this floppy hat.
I like the episode of Deep Space Nine where Sisko has that fucking dream that he's a writer.
Yes.
And then you just get Michael Dorn in that episode just like as himself.
Oh, okay. That's the first time I ever saw him without his prosthetics.
He's hot.
Holy fuck. It wasn't until he spoke that I was just like, oh my god, this is like someone.
That's Worf.
Yeah. Like, and oh my god. You can't see this, but I'm fanning myself.
Oh my god.
Okay. So,
horny for Worf. Confirmed.
Roddenberry's first show of his own that he produced was the Lieutenant, set at Camp Pendleton, the West Coast base for the U.S. Marine Corps, focused on the lives of men of the Corps during the Cold War.
Sounds fucking awful.
It sounds like Star Trek, but on a military base.
Yeah, so Star Trek, but fucking lame. Like,
yeah, non-sci-fi Star Trek.
Star Trek for imperialists.
Also, even more so, because future Star Trek actors appeared as guest stars, including Leonard Nimoy, who became Spock,
Yep.
Nichelle Nichols, who became Uhura,
Yep.
Walter Koenig, who became Ensign Pavel Chekhov,
Yep.
and I don't know how to say her name, Majel Barrett, who became his future wife.
Yeah, and is Troy's mom.
Yeah,
Lux
Swana. She also played 2 roles in the original series.
Yeah.
And she's also the voice of the computer in that like what would you call like there's got to be a name that we can call Next Gen Voyager DS9 like
OG Trek.
Yeah, but that means original series.
Oh, true. I don't know, like
Middle Kingdom.
Trek Prime, right?
Yeah.
That's original form Trek.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm using that now.
Trek Prime.
Yeah.
What would like the second one be? New Trek. Oh, it's just called New Trek.
Yeah, it's just called New Trek.
Yeah.
And Enterprises, we don't talk about Bruno. I still haven't seen that movie. Okay. Where am I in my notes? Burp, burp, burp.
Gene Roddenberry
Oh.
buried his face in some titties.
He did. I have, a couple sections down. I have a section titled Polyamory or Serial Cheater.
Ooh.
So we're going to get to it.
Ooh.
But so like Roddenberry obviously was like kind of forward thinking for his time, or at least he met like a certain bar of expectations of anti-racism. But then like also you can tell that he was a white man existing in the 20th century, that there's just like aspects of his writing like folded in that are white supremacist.
He's a liberal.
Yeah.
Like I am sorry to say this in this podcast, and I know that we
You
were
are
like,
not sorry to say this, don't lie.
You're right. Yes, I am not. But you know, one, don't take my bashing of liberals as me being a conservative. Again, I'm a communist. Secondly, when you are the beneficiary in a white supremacist society, like a white male liberal is, right? Mm-hmm. You're gonna write like that.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that like you can
clear,
like separate yourself from that.
All white men, liberal, conservative, whatever, you're gonna be.
It's going to be like if I wrote something, yeah. I'm not going to be like perfect somehow, right?
Yeah.
You know, and like as well, like white supremacy is baked into liberal ideology. I'm not going to extrapolate on that. You're just going to have to deal with it.
You want to give like a
white supremacy is baked into American ideology, and American liberal ideology falls within that sphere. I know that you think that you're anti-racist, but you support all of the systems that racism exists with them. There it is.
Do you want to give like an appendix of like, if you want more information, go listen to this podcast.
Read Marx. Read Marx and go read Angela Davis and Frantz Fanon. Genuinely, like, just read a bunch of black leftists, also Karl Marx. Like,
yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so along those lines, he was asked to write for a series called Riverboat. It was set in 1860s Mississippi.
And Guinan was in it.
Oh, fucking wish. He found out the producers wouldn't include black people on the show.
Whoa.
And he argued with them so much about it that they fired him.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So like he would put his foot down about stuff like this. But then like later when it came to making the animated series for Star Trek, like after the original series,
right?
He says this was for costing reasons, but he originally wasn't going to bring Sulu or like the actors for Sulu and Uhura back. And then Leonard Nimoy found out about it and was just like, fucker, get them. I won't do this unless they're doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, look, everyone does this. There are times where you choose to like fight your battles, be the sore thumb, and then other times you're just like, I just gotta get this fucking done.
Yeah, no. And
working in a corporate setting, I do that all the time.
I mean, as much as I am like a stubborn bitch about a lot of stuff, there is a lot of times where like I really do have to like pick like when do I do this? Also, like I'm just gonna say like Roddenberry, like we can acknowledge like, oh yeah, that animated series thing is shitty. But it's also cool that he did the Riverboat thing, right?
Yeah.
So just individual actions, right?
Yeah. I mean, people like Roddenberry who like were cool sometimes opened up more space within Hollywood for people who were cool more often.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like Star Trek, the OG Star Trek, for how weird and fucked up it is like important. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this happens in the original series, but also like, let's say DS9, like people of minorities can watch a show where they're not necessarily depicted at, like their identity themselves, but they can like see themselves in the characters. Trans people see themselves in Jadzia Dax.
Yeah. Imagine how refreshing it must have been to like, I mean, personally, I get this with like certain characters who are either gay or coded gay, where it's like they are just depicted as like normal people who are also gay, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, right, I'm bisexual, so like that's there, right? But like I think about like Cisco and like Uhura, right, who are like, here's a black character on TV, just being allowed to exist in this part of the, you know, like as a part of this. I imagine, I don't know, like I don't want to fucking speak for minorities or anything. That's far beyond my place. But like I imagine, like that's got to be important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think also like once we get to recapping DS9, like getting into that of like, you know, cool. First black captain in Starfleet.
Also the best captain.
You just love pissing people off.
What do you mean? Who? Okay. I know there are a lot of diehards for Picard, which I get. I like Picard. I know there's a lot of diehards for Janeway and Kirk, right? I don't know any of the. There's Archer in them. There's like the rest of them. I don't really fucking know.
Archer is a war criminal. Actually, look,
all captains are war criminals. But Cisco was actually the Messiah. That's not even
Yeah.
a joke. But like, I don't know how you look at the character arc of Ben Sisko and then look at the character arc of the rest of them and be like, yeah, one of the other ones is better, right? Maybe it's just because Deep Space Nine is like generally like a much more coherent and much more like character driven idea, right?
Well, also we feel that way because like we're used to and we look for serialized TV. DS9 was like one of the first TV shows to do that, and that's why it feels more threshed out because it is.
Yeah.
They just didn't do that before. Yeah. I can go to the next point, so we stop tangenting.
Fuck, man. Yeah.
Okay. I have a section about his religious views. He was raised Southern Baptist. Yeah, that face. That was my face when I read that too. He began questioning religion at 14 and decided it was all bullshit.
Oh, like everyone.
Yeah. I mean, look, not everyone because, like...
Oh, yeah. Like I was an edgy 14-year-old atheist, right? I'm an edgy 14-year-old atheist now. Like,
yeah. I got there when I was 19, I think.
No, everyone who's an atheist has that phase where you're like, yeah, this is all bullshit. Fuck it. You know?
Yeah. As a kid, he sang in the church choir, but he substituted lyrics in the hymns that I really want to know what he substituted it for. He later identified
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an SNL skit waiting to happen.
Star Trek hymns.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my God. He later identified as a humanist.
What does that mean?
I don't know. That's just what Wikipedia said.
Cool.
He was kind of a religious voyeur.
Voyager.
I know words.
I don't.
He had this like ongoing interest in other people's experiences with religion, and he called Catholicism a very beautiful religion and art form.
That's quite a nuanced like way to think about it. Like, I kind of get that in a way because like
if you look at the like ritual of mass, yes. If you look at the culture behind all of it, that's a pretty icky thing to say.
there are pretty few religions that don't have like that kind of fucked up thing. Like if you were to like look at like Protestantism or any religion, period, because
humans,
most of them are fucked up, right? There's like two that maybe aren't. Shintoism. I don't know enough about Shintoism to say that, but I get that where it's like Catholicism, and I think maybe this is because I'm entering this from a American perspective, but Catholicism is like, as opposed to like Protestantism, which is what I'm used to, because I was never raised religious, but my grandparents were, and my dad was too. It feels like it gives more of a fuck, if that makes sense.
Do you mean like actively thinks about it day to day? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems more involved. I don't
Yes.
know. I feel like I'm making generalizations. I also, not to shit on Protestantism, like I know nothing about this. I'm just like making.
I was raised Catholic.
Oh.
And that knowing that your face just said, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, but so I like went through confirmation, but even by that point, I was just kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this, but I don't want to piss off my grandparents, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
So like I wasn't like super engaging with those ideas. And then by the time that I got to college, I was just like, I'm just not doing this shit anymore. And so like it hasn't stuck in my memory super well, but like at least the Catholicism that I grew up with was much more cultural than actual like involved in like scripture and like real detailed theological ideas other than don't have sex ever and never touch yourself.
So lame.
Yeah. Real party poopers.
This is why I'm like, if I was going to pick a religion, I'd go for Buddhism. Either Buddhism or Judaism. One of the two. Most based groups.
do a little charcuterie of religions.
Yeah.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
A little bit of that.
Yeah. Okay, so Roddenberry insisted on no religion in Star Trek. He had this like in-world idea, like the way that he was like doing his world building. He believed that contemporary Earth religions would be gone by the 23rd century. Which like, again, buddy, there's like, religion has been around since...
Contemporary Earth religions might be, though. By the 23rd century, I don't know if it would be by the 23rd century, but in Star Trek, isn't there a period of time where like everyone nukes each other?
Yeah, World War III.
Yeah. And there's the wars that Khan was created in, that's like the eugenics wars and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like I think about in the one, how fucked up is it that there was a eugenics war? But
Yeah.
in real life history, the rise of existentialism came out of a loss of faith in response to the Holocaust. I don't think it's so hard to believe that there would be a fall from power of religious organizations after atomic annihilation. Like, I kind of buy that.
I buy that the specific forms of religion will have at least changed or like morphed into something else, but there will always at least be spiritualism.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. There's no way that they wouldn't.
yeah. I think that like when Roddenberry was thinking up Star Trek, he was thinking up an ideal society, not necessarily what he actually thought that the trajectory would be. I think it was kind of like a bit of both buckets, but it was more so like an idealized like trajectory. Because like if you were to, well, also like the 60s were very optimistic in themselves.
That was a period of time where people like actually saw real change happen in their lifetime.
Yeah, and like, you know, not always great change for some people, but for a lot of people it was good change.
Well, you see, in my opinion, what is the most material, the actual greatest success of American democracy, the civil rights movement, right? Like that is like, in my mind, perhaps one of the only times that American democracy did its job. And it's because a bunch of, people of color, organized and did a thing. It's not even necessarily like through the mechanisms of American democracy, but it is like, that is one of the last times that we saw a popular movement succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then it's been chipped away at and kneecapped since then, and we are.
Oh, and there's also been a morphing of the narrative of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, but like
civility bullshit.
Done. We fixed racism in the 60s.
Obama was president.
Yeah,
we're not racist anymore. Like like fucking insane. Yeah, so I think you're right. That idea that like there is this real optimism about the 60s. It was also back when you could get a job at a factory and fucking support your family, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because if Roddenberry were to be making a show about actual analytical projection of what society could be and wrote that in like the 80s, even that would be super different.
Well, okay. An actual sci-fi thing that came around in the 80s, which is, I mean, I'm going to compare Star Trek to it a lot because I think they're two sides of the same coin, because Star Trek is an idealized version of the world, and Warhammer is a satire of a larger world. Whereas Star Trek has no religion, Warhammer is explicitly like seeped in religion and shit like that, right? I think Warhammer came around in the 80s or the 90s, one of the two, right?
You are asking the wrong person.
Yeah, true. It's not like this is the idealized version of the world. It's like this, like it's very Gen X, where it's like, yeah, the world sucks, and this is what it's going to be like. It's all for fucking nothing. Go fuck yourself, right? It's all pointless. Fuck you, right? The ethos of ironically saying groovy, right? Because nothing was groovy, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, that's the 90s. I don't know. Gen X is a very like hard thing to read because the 80s and the 90s were so different.
Yeah.
But if Roddenberry was to write his like hypothetical perfect civilization in the 80s, it would likely be very similar, but everyone would be like, fuck off. Like,
yeah.
No one would watch Star Trek if it was conceptualized in the 80s.
Yeah, I think Next Generation would not have had any traction if the original, I mean, obviously it came out of the original series, but like if there wasn't an existing fandom for this ideal world.
Yeah, everyone would have been like, fuck you, this isn't how the world is.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself, nerd. I
just have one more point on his religious views, and then we can talk about if he's a polyamorist or a serial cheater.
Gene Roddenberry fucked everyone.
He really did. So the writers in original series, and probably at the beginning of Next Gen, would like get in trouble for even like referring to marriage. Because I guess you really conceived of marriage as like a religious construct.
Free love, baby. Fucking Gene Roddenberry's he's still tripped out on that hippie pussy, dude.
But then also like when he's writing the show Bible for Next Gen, he's talking about it as like the bridge crew operating as like a family of brothers and sisters who wind up fucking each other.
It's a commune. Like,
yes, it is a commune.
Like it's very like the Enterprise. I'm gonna keep fuck, I have to stop prefacing this with it, but like it's like this like vision of like what would the future be like. You ask a liberal from the 60s, like, oh yeah, everyone fucks each other constantly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great segue. Gene began dating his first wife, Eileen Anita Rexroth. It's a hard last name to say.
Cool name though.
Before he left for his military duty. They married in 1942 and they had 2 kids. While he was with the LAPD, he had affairs with a lot of secretarial staff. And before Star Trek, so when he was like writing for those like crime procedurals and shit,
Right.
he began relationships with both Nichelle Nichols and Mael Barrett.
Shit.
Yeah. He wanted an open relationship with both women. He's still married to Eileen.
Yeah, Jesus.
But Nichols recognized Barrett's devotion to him and ended the affair because she was like, I don't want to be the other woman to the other woman.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God. And also they're all working together.
Yeah.
Like,
Somebody fucking call the HR department.
Oh my God. All of that must have been so weird. He began the process of divorcing Eileen while making the original series. And it was like really drawn out because he was like, yeah, I'm going to divorce Eileen. But then he started on the first season of Star Trek. And he's like, wow, I'm really busy. I got to wait.
Yeah.
And then they kept doing Star Trek. And he's like, wow, I'm still busy. And
this busyness never went away.
That's me with every idea I ever have.
It's going to be this podcast eventually.
No, it's not. Yeah, so he moved out of his family home 2 weeks after his daughter's wedding.
Ooh.
This man is just like...
Roddenberry's an asshole.
Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. He is like a walking black hole of drama.
Yeah.
In 1969, so like right when original series ended, he was scouting movie locations to Japan when he proposed to Barrett over the phone. And
class act.
In Japan, they got married in a Shinto ceremony.
Ah, the true religion, Shinto.
Because Roddenberry had considered it sacrilegious to use an American minister in Japan.
Weird.
Just like it's like, huh.
Very strange.
If I were to meet him at a dinner party, I'd just be sitting there with like my hand on my mouth, like kind of slowly nodding and just being like, wow.
I would like pick his brain constantly. Like I would. If I was a therapist, I would want to be Gene Roddenberry's therapist.
Oh my God. I want to be at that person at the dinner party who's not participating in the conversation, but
you're
just listening.
Hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to talk to him.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I don't want to talk to him. I want to listen to him.
Oh my God. He sounds very draining.
Yeah.
Barrett and he had a son who was Eugene Jr. and went by Rod.
Oh.
So he was Rod Roddenberry.
Rod. Like Dick, get it?
It reminds me of in the series of unfortunate events, isn't there that person whose name is like Montgomery?
I do not know.
Oh, I'll have to ask Maddie.
I never read that as a kid. I was too busy fucking eating bugs and watching Star Wars.
Reading Dune.
I didn't read Dune. I read Dune when I was like 15.
Okay. All right. So past your bug eating phase.
No.
Okay. When's the last time you ate a bug?
Yesterday.
Great.
Yeah. Never give up, kids. Never give up on your dreams.
Okay. Also, from 1975 until his death, Roddenberry maintained an extramarital relationship with his executive assistant, Susan Sackett.
Bro was up to the eyes in pussy. Like,
yeah. He was never, it seems like he never
why would you
didn't have a secondary relationship.
Luxwana, what are you thinking when you're like, yes, okay, I am marrying this man who I was the other woman for. He's not gonna cheat on me. Like,
I don't know. And like, I think by this, let's see.
Could it be that they were in an open relationship?
Right. Well, so I was gonna say like, they were married when they did the Naked Now, or not? No, wasn't that?
Naked Now is the one where Data fucks.
Yeah, there's another episode where Troy and Luxwana wind up naked and they're like in captivity with like Ferengi or something, I think. And but he's not alive at that point. Anyway, at least I don't think he is. I think that's later on in the series. But yeah, so this is something that Matt and I were talking about. Like, were they in an open relationship? Were they polyamorous? and they were just in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where, you know, monogamy was
the norm.
Was really the only like publicly acceptable form of a and arguably still is.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was like, yeah, they were just like fucking people. It's also like weird tangent, but nerds are like weird about sex. Where like
we are.
Every nerd I've ever met who like fucks is also like really into fucking. Like not in the way that like a normal person's into fucking, where it's like I like pussy, right? It's like they call sex play. They always have like 12 partners. They've got a million fucking toys, right?
Yeah, the person who goes to con and has a primary and like 3 secondaries, like that is a kind of person.
Yeah. Somebody who is like very into like getting called either daddy or kitten on Discord.
There's got to be a polycule out there that does D&D together. That's gotta be that exists, and that's gotta be very interesting. And
I want that as a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god.
If you're a polycule who plays D&D, contact us. We will help you set up a podcast.
No, don't talk to us. We don't know what we're doing yet.
Contact Nor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like on the one hand, I'm like, wow, was Roddenberry also a fucking piece of shit, or were they like? Also, here's the thing: we're not gonna know because like he's dead.
And it's I mean, his wife's dead too, right?
I think she died recently.
Yeah.
Like she has always spoken very highly of him. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think there's really one way to say one way or the other. Like also, you can be a polyamorist but still cheat.
Yeah.
And you can like do bad polyamory.
Yeah.
So like, you know, maybe he was a polyamorous but like didn't always abide by his own rules. Like I'm sure not everyone he was involved with was always super on the same page with him about this.
Well, if you want like my read on it.
No, I don't, co-host. Shut your mouth.
This is now the M podcast.
Yeah.
Where Ryan shuts the fuck up and listens. But my read on it is that the first marriage, not open relationship.
Yeah.
Everything after he starts boinking Laxwana, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, in Uhura.
Sounds like it was like to some degree.
Yeah, it's like he got married, and it's like the people who get married and then realize they're gay. It seems to me that he got married and realized that he wanted to be in an open relationship, but he probably like got married because like that's what people did.
Yeah, no, I think about like my own grandparents who are his age demographic. Actually, no, because my grandparents are boomers and he's a greatest generation, but they like had a kid and got married at like 22 because it was like a thing that you did, right?
Well, arguably through millennials.
Yeah,
it's like not as like
prominent,
strong,
yeah,
within like the cultural like
miasma.
Yeah, but like it's definitely still a phenomenon that people my age just got married because they thought they were supposed to. And like, I mean, I'm getting married. I'm not saying that getting married is a bad idea outright.
No, it is. Don't get married, everyone. Fuck until you die.
I mean, we're going to do that.
No. Fuck strangers until you die. Okay. Genius Roddenberry having lots of sex.
Yes. That's all I have on his sex life.
Aw, man.
But
I was hoping we would find out at some point that like the Klingon ridges were like a part of his fetish or something.
The Klingon ridges.
It's that way they weren't doing blackface anymore.
Yeah, well,
arguably they still are, but
someone's like, okay, give me an alien, and then he's like, okay, here's an alien, and then they're like, no, dude, that's blackface. It's like, okay, let me try again. And he comes back, he's like, dude, that's still blackface. they keep fucking doing it.
They're pushing the line.
Yeah. I mean, like. It's that
just make white Klingons. It wouldn't be that hard.
I think that there's an albino Klingon in Discovery. It doesn't help that they. I mean, same with the
in
Jem'Hadar.
Discovery. Did they go back to the fucking like blackface that they did in the original series? That would be so funny if they were like, "This is the most diverse cast ever," but we are doing blackface again.
You know what?
That's a joke in poor taste. We might have to cut this out.
You know what? I like to think that we're past doing that kind of bullshit, but I also know that we're not.
Like us as a podcast? Or
No,
like...
no. The humans who are alive in America right now
Oh,
as
yeah.
a whole.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people still making a lot of mistakes, and arguably, we always will.
Yeah. Disney need to decanonize OG series. It causes so many fucking problems.
Yeah.
This is okay. That's a really hot take, and people will scream at me for it, but I genuinely think that would like help.
I mean, I think that a certain amount of like divorce. It's like you've got your source material in inspiration, but there's a certain amount of divorcing from it when you make new material, which like I would argue that they're doing. What was I gonna say though? Oh, about the Klingons. It's like Klingons and Jem'Hadar. It's not like outright blackface, but it does not help that they almost always cast black men, and they are specifically the most aggressive species.
No, you're right.
And it's written by white people.
Well, also, like,
It's not a great look.
Yeah, well, and also, like, there are, like, okay, Vulcans are white people.
There's Vulcans of, like, all different races, because you got Tuvok.
Oh, yeah, true, but Vulcans are white people, if you get what I mean. Like, in the world of, like, you have, like, this is weird for me to say, but, like, you're in, like, the context of this, where it's, like, you have the Federation, which is going out and civilizing people, basically.
Yeah,
right.
Soft imperialism.
Soft imperialism. Big air quotes on that one. The Federation of Planets and the two like core worlds of the Federation of the Planets, Earth and Vulcan, right? They're white people. I know I just keep saying that, but like they are metaphorically Europe, right?
Yeah. Well, it obviously the humans depicted in Star Trek are not that far off from like an American Western idea of what it is to be, you know, culturally human.
Right.
And what was I saying? Oh, like how we were talking about earlier, that like Star Trek is really inspired by American corporate culture, kind of like that big businessman corner office like kind of feel.
Yeah.
I think like at that point, corporate culture was kind of thought of as the pinnacle of human achievement in terms of like being efficient and like high yield for high efficiency.
Right.
And like, if you take that to its extreme, you get the Vulcans.
That's true. Yeah, no, and like the Vulcans represent like the idea of the fantasy of being able to entirely separate yourself from your emotions, being able to be pure rational, right? Which is the like, I mean, I don't mean this in a political sense. I mean like the philosophical movement known as like liberalism. Very close to that, where it's like this idea, or like this idea that like, and like empiricism and shit like that, where it's this idea that we have to be objective about everything, and there's no room for subjectivity, and we have to stick to facts, and you know all of that kind of stuff. Facts don't care about your feelings, right?
Yeah,
it's that ethos.
It's always in a state of nirvana.
Not in a state of nirvana, like always
in terms of detachment.
Yeah, you're a computer. You have no emotions, no fucking attachments, right? You're purely logical.
This is something I was also thinking about when I was like doing my research, given that Roddenberry worked commercial flights that flew to Asia and that he was in World War II, which
I'm married in Asia too.
Yeah. Obviously this is not a new take. There's a lot of like
Orientalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In like alien culture depicted, especially in original series.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Klingons are blackface mixed with being a like poorly informed weeb. We said that in a conversation earlier.
Yeah. But like, I think that like the stoicism of Vulcans is influenced by a Western interpretation of some Asian religions, such as Buddhism.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm getting on a tangent. Sorry.
You're fine. One last interesting point. Years after his death, Roddenberry was one of the first humans to have their ashes carried into Earth orbit, along with like 22 or something other remains of people, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
So Jeff Bezos, Roddenberry did it first.
Yeah.
He didn't get to be alive, but you know.
I also think it's interesting. Like, I like that idea that like, I miss the time when like sci-fi writers were like actual science nerds, you know.
Yeah,
or like at least fascinated with like the concept of space, right?
Like, yeah, Roddenberry wasn't just like a Hollywood person.
He was a science dweeb.
Yeah, and he was a popular culture philosopher.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most like academically clean
Or insightful, right?
Yeah. Like he had he was like in correspondence with a philosopher of the time that I cannot remember right now. And like Roddenberry talked about himself as being irreligious. But like I don't remember if this guy said it after his death or like if he was just like talking to someone when Roddenberry wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's this quote of him being like, he thinks he's not religious, but he's definitely not religious.
Yeah. It sounds like Roddenberry was I think like Roddenberry would be like, I think it's such a tragedy that Roddenberry never got to experience like 21st century culture and psychological methods. Cause I feel like if he had gotten that, there would be so much insight to like be gleamed from it. Like he seems like somebody who like is really close to getting it, you know?
Yeah. But I was thinking the other day, his vision inspired so much technology, which has been really cool and helpful and useful.
The Apple Watch, right? That's like one that you see every day.
But then today, it's really efficient and easy to have these devices. But now we have this whole new worry, not about efficiency, but about privacy. And I would be interested to see how he would feel about that, you know? Like, I feel like that's one of the bigger topics about, like, the technological future.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because Roddenberry was living in a analog world.
Yeah.
He had no concept of, like, what a digitized world could actually look like, right?
Yeah, like, when you look at, like, the hardware of the Enterprises, like, from original series and next gen.
The fanciest thing on it is, like, touchscreens. And I mean, like, there's phasers and shit, but like...
Yeah. Or like, the special... I mean, this also comes down to budgeting and special effects, but, like, when they're conceiving of what a control panel looks like
it's big buttons.
It's big buttons. They're thinking... And, like, it's a stationary... Like, you don't, like, get screens that come and go away.
Yeah, it's not like Iron Man.
Yeah.
You know? Like...
And, you know, they have these chips that they pull out that, like, carry a bunch of information... thinking that was like super technologically advanced.
It was.
We have that now.
Yeah, it's fucking a USB like thumb drive, which like nobody uses anymore.
Yeah, so like if you were to like be thinking of in the future from this vantage point, you would be thinking of like a little grain of salt computer chip that holds like, you know, your honey stick amount of data from like the like Star Trek, you know?
Yeah.
Like it would just be a totally different scale.
Well, it would be in your brain. Or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, which sucks. That sucks. And I think if I got the keys to Star Trek, I feel like the first thing I would do would like immediately like address how would the 23rd century fucking deal with like privacy issues and stuff like that. Because we're also like in America, we're post Patriot Act, so like there's a lot of that. But I think like one of the things that I would really care about is like how would people ever even manage like a work-life relationship in a world that's so technologically advanced and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, that's something I think about a lot while watching Star Trek.
All of them have horrible work-life relationships.
Yes, but I think that also comes out of it's written in a time where everyone's like, yes, give your life to your corporation.
Yeah, do coke and sell stocks on the market at all times.
Your personal identity and worth is based off what you do for work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know, I think that's like one of the thinking of humans as being able to conceive of a world in which everyone has work-life balance, everyone has their basic needs met, and therefore they can like really use their time. Like it's like the whole humans now are so much more efficient. There's no reason for us to be working 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Well, we live like this is a post-scarcity society in both respects, right? Like we live in a post-scarcity society currently. Everyone could be fed and housed if we wanted to. Hot take. But Star Trek especially lives in a post-scarcity society. You have fucking replicators. All you have to do is make sure replicators work, and that's it.
Yeah.
You have a working, breathing society, right?
Yeah. The social habit of overworking yourself
still exists.
Yeah. I guess like that ethic is really kind of only as, at least, you know, in the American version of it, only as old as America itself, and like which came from American Puritanism.
Well, it also comes from the advent of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
If you were a fucking serf and it was like, well, I've got enough fucking potatoes that I needed to for the year, you weren't going to be like, well, if I work harder, they'll make me a feudal lord. Like, no, you fucking knew what you were. Like,
yeah, you made enough potatoes? Great, go dance around the maypole.
yeah, you fucking learn how to play the fiddle like a good peasant, you know?
Yeah. I took a class called American Art History when I was in school, and like as such, we covered the cultural aspects of like colonial America and how that fed into like early, America.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to see that even in colonial America, like the work ethic was not that far off from what it is now.
Yeah. Well, and
which sucks.
that does suck. And that's one of those things where, like, learning about it, I'm going to talk about this a lot, but the history of capitalism class that I took, right? Hold on. Whoa. Shit, fuck, ass. Sorry.
You can always just, like, we can cut this shit out. You're fine. You don't have to, it can be dead air. It's fine.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, in my history of capitalism class, well, you have, like, the Protestant work ethic, but you also have, at that time, like, you're working for sustenance, right?
Yeah.
And for now, we've created a situation where, like, even though we live in a post-scarcity society, if you don't work, you die. So we overdose on working in order to make sure we don't die. It's a death drive thing. And in Star Trek, it's interesting because, like, I'm like, why would you ever join Starfleet? Why would I ever do all of that shit just to, like, be on a boat when I could be, like, I don't know, just, like fucking or something? Like, why would I do that when I could, like, I don't know, make art that I care about? And I suppose exploring the universe is, like, kind of that's a similar level.
Yeah. I mean,
I suppose more so I'd just be like, why would I put myself in a work situation when I don't have to? Like,
well, yeah, I think that this is something that's the subject of some episodes are people who are like, oh my god, the drudgery of like reporting into engineering and clearing out the conduits. Oh my god, do I have to do this again? I got into Starfleet so I could like discover black holes and shit and like wormholes or whatever. And like I think like that's why people got into Starfleet, because it's kind of like why people get into NASA. Like,
yeah,
people get into NASA because they get super hyped about these new discoveries, which is, like, it's true, and that's how that happens. But it happens because there's a lot of like drudgery
bitch work.
Yeah,
yeah.
But there's also a way to do that with work-life balance.
Yeah. I think especially it's like the culture of the 80s.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
And is that your last point?
That is my last point.
All right. Outro. Woo.
Yeah. This first episode, no transitions.
We're gonna cut a ton of shit from this episode, but all of my burps will still be in there.
If you fucking keep the burps, I will not do this podcast with you.
We have been Klingon Opera House. Love you. I'll smooch you.
But you will ask first.
Yes. Go fucking alien. Goodbye.
Oh my god.